Erev Tov, everybody. Wish you a nice, from the secular standpoint, a nice beginning of the month of May, more or less the beginning. And of course, we are celebrating Parshas Emor, having followed a couple of weeks of double Parshiot. This week, we will have the reading of Parshas Emor exclusively. So we'll begin now, and to talk a little bit about, we could talk about so many different things, many different Yamim Tovim. We can talk about conflict and other things, but what I'd like to do today, or this evening, is to speak with you about the mitzvah of the Omer. The Omer has two elements, of course, to it. One is the bringing of the Omer on the second day of Pesach, which in Eretz Israel is the first day of Chol HaMoed, and in Galut it is the second day of Yom Tov, and then of course there is from the point that the Omer was brought, and that was in Eretz Israel. We count 50 days. So there's the counting of the Omer, the bringing of the Omer, or what we call the Hanafa, the waving of the Omer. Israel was an agrarian society, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us, actually for all eternity, halachot that apply not only in an agrarian society, but also these very same halachot have managed to help us to endure as a people throughout the Galut, wherever we were, whether it was in Warsaw or whether it was in the fields outside of Warsaw. Jews were able to survive, again, with Russia or the Baltic states, wherever they were. Jews inhabited both the cities and also, of course, the rural areas and the agrarian society there. So today we're going to talk about a primary mitzvah that we have, and that is the mitzvah of the Omer. The bringing of the Omer, which was done in the Beis HaMikdash, in the times of the Beit HaMikdash. The Omer itself was a relatively small korban, and of course it was brought in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, and it was brought to the Beit HaMikdash. And the grain that was used for the Omer was se'orah. Se'orah, in the words and the feelings of Chazal, is in fact one of the least majestic of the grains. As a matter of fact, it was also brought or given to animals for food. Not the Omer, but the se'orah, the barley that was used, was considered to be less of a tasty food and more fit, or at least fit to some degree, even to use to feed animals. So of course that begs the question, why is this chosen? Why not wheat? We do know that we have other korbanot that were brought from wheat. The shtei halechem at the end of this 50-day period, which is brought on Shavuot, that's taken from wheat. And we have other such mitzvot with wheat that would also include the lechem apanim, etc. Those things are all, and they are also associated with korbanot as well. Korban toda, loaves of bread were given and brought then and consumed by as many people as who could join the host at a time of joy of the bringing of the korban toda. So, in fact, we have here an unusual korban which we're going to explore this evening. Now, first place we're going to turn is to the Sefer HaChinuch, which was written as a text that would help to give rationales for the mitzvot. A rationale does not mean we know the exact purpose or meaning of a mitzvah. It is, in the words of Rav Gifter Zecher Tzadok Livracha, that tells Rosh Hashiva, it makes the mitzvah go down easier. and he likened it, and I've mentioned this before, but I think it bears mentioning, fairly often. He said it's like when we give, if a child needs an antibiotic, the antibiotic itself is in itself perhaps a bitter taste. So what does the pharmacist do nowadays? He flavors it, or she flavors it. You could have raspberry, you could have cherry, you could have banana, you could have what you like. And so when the mother wants to give this medicine to her child, or father too, but usually it's the mother, she might ask, what kind of medicine would you like? And they'll say, I like cherry, I like banana. And then, of course, it can be flavored if that's going to make it go down. So in the words of Rav Gifter, the child feels that he's getting candy. Mother knows the candy is secondary. What's important is the antibiotic or the medicine that the child is ingesting. Same thing, said Rav Gifter Zatzal, when we have rationales for mitzvot, or what we call ta'amei ha-mitzvot. Notice the term ta'amei, ta'am, is it a taste? So, but that does not mean that's necessarily the reason for the mitzvah, but it helps it go down. That's very good. Not, by the way, of course, mitzvot are in and of themselves not something which has any bitterness to them, bitter taste, except for maror, of course, but they are designed to have us ingest them, both metaphorically, actually, and by doing so, it gives our lives a taste. It goes down, life goes down better when we do mitzvot. And so that's what Rav Gifter said. So let's take a look at the Sefer Chinuch, whose author dedicated the entire work to teaching his son, and by extension, the children of all of Klal Yisrael, rationales for mitzvot. And he says, this mitzvah, shenakriv, but b'yom sheni shel Pesach, that we needed to bring in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, we brought on the second day of Pesach, yeter ala musaf shel shar shel yemei HaPesach, more than beyond the other materials in the korban musaf. Also korban omer was brought. Keves ben shanato la'olah. In addition to the musaf, on the first day of Pesach, on the second day of Pesach, a keves, a lamb was brought to the Beit HaMikdash. All the korbanot, almost all korbanot had to be brought to the Beit HaMikdash itself. And then the omer echad shel saurim, and one omer, which is a relatively small measure of barley, right? Anikra omer hatanufa. It was the barley, that omer itself was brought, waved, omer hatanufa. Waving, some of the Chazal say that waving in itself gives it a certain majestic quality to it. And we find, of course, na'anuim when we shake our lulav and esrog, that in itself is a certain celebratory element to it. And so therefore it was brought, Emor, he tavo v'havitem et omer atnufa, et omer reshit firchem, inif et omer, they would bring the korban omer, and they would wave it lifnei Hashem. Now, the inyan hamincha came. This is what the whole idea of a mincha was. Shahayu mevi'im shlosha sa'im sa'orin. They would bring three sa, relatively small shear of grain. Umotziin et hakol isaron echad. And when they put it together, it became one isaron. Shehu humanuped. That it is we use it. It's what we do with flour. All right, with an instrument where it becomes flour. Right. V'lokhem there we take it. Magish keneged huda shel keren amaravi dromit b'shar hamanachot kishar hamanachot. It's brought on the northwest corner of the Mizbeach. Kometz is brought there, meaning to say a small part of that whole korban. Ashar ne'echol hakohanim b'sharei kol hamenachot, b'sharei kol hamenachot, like all of the other menachot that we have. And then says, Shea mitzvah, what is the rationale of that mitzvah, which is brought today? Shenitbonein b'toch ma'aseh ha'chesed gadol she'osa HaKadosh Baruch Hu in briotav, that we should be cognizant, shenitbonein, and we should consider that chesed which HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for us, that we tend to take for granted. All you need to do is go to a food store now in America, and the chesed is overwhelming what we have. All right, and sometimes when somebody says, "I'm going to go to the store, I'll pick up one thing or another," and we don't even spend the time. We really should contemplate each time, not once in a while, each time the chesed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us, especially in this particular land of bounty which we have. Right, so. And we can survive and live. Lachein roi lanu shenakriv lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu mimena lema'an nazkir chasdo. We therefore bring the Omer korban so that we should make mention of his chesed. It's an opportunity for us to mention the chesed. Shenitzavinu bazeh b'shnei b'sheni shel Pesach v'lo be'echad Pesach. And the mitzvah is on the second day Pesach, not the first. So that and the two magnificent mitzvah which we have, the mitzvah of Pesach itself, the korbanot Pesach, and other. So not on the first day, the second day. Why? To keep these particular mitzvot separate, even though there is a great deal of overlap between them. First day is the korbanot and the korban Pesach, we eat at night. The next day we eat the Omer. So that and we eat and we wave the Omer. That's the mitzvah that we have here. Once again, the standard view of the Sefer HaChinuch is we need to be cognizant when we have things. I'm sure I'm not proud of saying that I recognize it. When I eat, I didn't make a bracha, or I just gulp down the bracha. And so therefore, as much as we can, we want to make sure that we use this as for what it is intended, namely the Omer. So that's the bringing of the Omer, which is in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. And now, of course, we have the mitzvah of counting. So today we want to talk a little bit also of the idea of the convergence of Kedusha that is in this particular system. It's, of course, Kedusha is, whether it is explicitly mentioned or not, throughout the Torah Kedusha. Nevertheless, it is in Emor that it becomes so powerfully clear to us that there are really four elements of Kedusha. One, of course, which is indicative of the Kohen Gadol, and on Yom Kippur, Kohen Gadol enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So the Kohen Gadol is a person who is Kadosh, not to the exclusion of the rest of us, but he exudes a tremendous amount of Kedusha. Then he enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim, by its very name, is indicative of the sanctification of the Beit HaMikdash. And of course, we have the word Mikdash, which means the place of sanctity. So now we have the person who enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom HaKippurim. We have, of course, at that point, we have also that it's on, and the time, the sanctity of time. And of course, Yom Kippur is the great sanctity of time. I think all of us, even people who are not so tied to the concept of Kedusha, or at least they're not as cognizant of Kedusha throughout the year, on Yom Kippur, it's something special. And so therefore, we have the person is Kadosh, representing the Kohen Gadol represents us on Yom Kippur, and he enters the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is the place of sanctity, that the place has Kedusha. The third thing, of course, is on Yom, on the day, the time sacred time itself. And by the way, and then of course there is the idea of as we will see that that humans, animals can also have a kedusha to them once they are sacrificed, the korbanot. So these four, all of them on Yom Kippur, converge: time, place, person, and the land of Eretz Yisrael. All of them converge in one, literally one pintele, one magnificent moment. And that, of course, is found when we talk about Yom Kippur, Parshas. Now, Rav Kook, if we were talking about the land, I'd like to talk a little bit about the kedusha of the land. I believe I mentioned it in the past, but it's worth mentioning again. See, Rav Kook understood the concept of kedusha and the concept of kedushat Eretz Yisrael, and it is no coincidence that the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael is both celebrated and appreciated during the very months that for 2,000 years, the Jews had almost no chagim, but with the emergence of Medinat Yisrael, we now have, of course, and the month of Iyar was pretty much devoid of the Yontif. Okay, you had Pesach Sheni, of course, but there were no Isurei Malacha or anything of that nature. But other than that, it was a month devoid of a Yontif. Okay. And here, all of a sudden, we have Yom Ha'atzmaut, and we have Yom HaZikaron, and we remember all of the magnificent things that happen in Eretz Yisrael, and we celebrate it in Eretz Yisrael. We have it now in the month of Iyar. That's no mistake. And then, of course, that's no coincidence. And then, of course, we have this parsha, the Parshiot of Iyar, in which you always includes Emor. And Emor, of course, leads us to understand the sanctity of the land, not to mention next week, Bahar, Bechukotai. We celebrate Shemitah and Yovel, in which we give gratitude in the fullest possible way to Hashem for the land which we have, through the Parshiot which we have, and through the mitzvot and the Yomim Tovim that we have, old and new. All of them converge. So I'd like to spend a moment or two now with you learning a very interesting medrash, Valgulas. Again, on this issue of Omer, which we're counting. Before we do the medrash, though, we should probably mention this, something that I think most of us have heard, and that's perfectly okay, that we count things that we're looking forward to, and we with enhanced anticipation. Now you say, well, you could do it the other way around, 50, 49, 48, 47, but Chazal and the Torah tells us that we should count up, because each elevated number enhances our anticipation, the 30th day, the 31st day, et cetera, until we get to the 49th and the 50th day, which is Kabbalat Torah. That's something, of course, which we all know, and that's something which is very important. Now, what I want to do is to share with you a remarkable Medrash Rabbah, remarkable Medrash Rabbah, and it's going to take us back a month. It takes us back to Purim time. Now, remember, it's important to know also, now we have, of course, a fixed calendar. You can see 30 years from now exactly what corresponding day in the secular calendar will be Pesach 100 years from now, because there is a pattern established by Hillel Hasheni, who lived in, I believe, the 5th century, and he realized that, of course, whereas ideally, when we have a Beit HaMikdash, the months are consecrated through Re'iyah, They're consecrated through witnesses who see the emergence of the new moon and the molad after the molad. So usually that's what was done. But of course, because most people up until recently didn't live in Yerushalayim, now well over 40% of the Jewish people live in Eretz Israel. And in Eretz Israel, you have almost 1 million people living in Yerushalayim. Hodu Hashem. So I don't know whether that will affect any change in the near future, but they are things which are dependent upon time. And before we begin this medrash, I want to talk just for a minute about time itself. You know, in English, we have 3 words that we use. There's time, and there's timely, and timeless. Those 3 words we use in English. All of them have a meaning. If somebody mentions time, it's one thing. When they say it's timely, the convergence of 2, timely, usually in a positive sense, the convergence of 2 valued entities come simultaneously. And then you have timeless, which means to say something beyond time. Time itself, Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us to count. So therefore, each new month is dependent upon the Jewish people declaring it, or as we live now, the Jewish people being good timekeepers. So that's time. Things that are timely are those areas where things which, whether they're events or whether they are objects that come together simultaneously, that's called timely. And then the third element is timeless. So now we're going to see from this medrash about these 3 concepts. It's the medrash Rabbi, Parshas Emor, which is our parsha, but it actually can be studied right before Purim too. Rabbi Levi Omar, Rabbi Levi said, "He she'amda lahem bimei Haman." This promise and this love of the Jewish people is evident, maybe even especially in the time of Haman. The Amar Rabbi Levi, Kivin Shera Mordechai et Haman ba kenegdo. Mordechai, in the middle of the Purim story, now you're tuned into the right place. In the middle of the Purim story, the Medrash tells us, the Medrash Rabbah, Tavchet 28:6, right, tells us that Mordechai sees Haman coming with the king's horse. Now that would be roughly the 5th chapter of Esther, and he sees Haman coming, and his assumption, Mordechai's assumption, is of course that Haman, as always, was up to no good. Right? Vasus biado, he was controlling the horse. Haman, Omar. Mordechai said to the children that he was teaching, Ani she'ein rasha zeh ba ela lo hargei. Omar Ani says, it appears to me that this Russia has an intent to kill me. Talmidav Yostvin, Tanyan, and his students were sitting, they were learning with him. He was teaching them. Okay? So Amar Lam, he said to them, run away, children, run away. This person is up to no good. Shema, ikvu b'gachalti. God forbid, as I get consumed or burnt, I don't want you to get hurt in the process. Amuleva said to him, Bein litol, bein lechaye. Whether it means that we're going to die or we're going to live. That's what the children said to Mordechai, according to the Medrash. Ananimoch, we're with you. Your fate is ours. Your fate is ours. We are not going to abandon you. Me'asa. So what did Mordechai do? He got nitates b'talito v'amar b'tfila. He did the thing that a Jew must daven, and he was davening. Hopefully, but he figured that's all he could do, and he was davening on the side, and to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the children continued learning. Whatever will be, will be. That, of course, story of the existence and the proliferation of Jews. Omar Lahem. Haman gets to them with his horse. He thinks, he's of course in trouble because he's looking for Mordecai, not to kill him, but he's looking for Mordecai because the king said, you're going to have him ride the horse. So he said to them, what are you studying? Now, again, the likelihood of this story happening as it's being portrayed, it may be more metaphorical than historical. In other words, the idea is we're going to see that there's a lesson that this Medrash Rabbah is teaching us. So he said to them, Bameh atem oskim. Tell me what you're learning. They said to him, Mitzvah ha'omer. We are learning about the mitzvah of the Omer. Bear in mind, this is a good 3 generations away from the last time the Omer was brought, maybe more. It's 60, 70 years, maybe more, since the last time the Omer was brought in the time of the Beit HaMikdash. Shahayu Yisrael Makov, even Mikdash, the Jews used to bring a korban Omer to the Mikdash. Right? So Amar Lohon, he said to them, this, of course, this was then really Pesach, it appears the story is, second day. So he said to them, this Omer that you're talking about, with Mordecai, Haman said to them, what is it? Is it gold or is it silver that you're doing? So they said to him, no, it's the Orin. Not only is it grain, it's probably the least majestic of the grains. It's used for fodder for the cattle oftentimes. And again, we all know the barley can be good. There's some people like barley soup, whatever it is, but it is not considered to be a prized cereal. Amar lahon, chama hava made today. How much is it worth? How much is it worth? If you want to sell it. So they said to him, you can buy it for a pittance, 10 units of money. Amar lahon. So he said to them, Haman said to them, get up, you're going to win. Why? Natzchu, aseret minchom, aseret alof. That I've given to the king. Your Omer, which has a monetary value of 10 units of whatever the monetary units were, that will certainly prevail over the 10,000 bars of gold or silver that I give to you. Why did he say it? Of course, he said it because, at least in the words of our Medrash and the understanding of our Medrash, certain things have a certain material value, and other things, of course, have spiritual value. Haman's thinking to himself, these kids, they're little kids, and they are studying a law that is ancient and has not been practiced, at least in its fullest sense, has not been practiced for 60, 70 years. And they're studying it with vigor. They're not moving. He said, therefore, when you have a society in which the youngest people in that society feel attached to the land, attached to the Torah, whatever I give the king is not going to see. Again, this medrash, I'm sure, is not intended to tell us historical. Certainly things like it have happened. We know that we have many stories where Jews maintained their spiritual strength. And by doing that, they overcame any terrible odds that they faced. But that's the idea. The idea here is that converging in our Parsha, the convergence of the holiness of man, the sanctity of man, sanctity of the land, Eretz Yisrael, the sanctity of the place, the Makom HaMikdash, and the sanctity of time, all have converged within the Jewish people. And every year we are reminded, and unless we forgot, but I don't think we did, but we're reminded of that convergence. Man, land, place, time, all of those elements we celebrate, not once in a while, every year we come back to it when we learn Parshas Emor. So Be'ezrat Hashem, may we enjoy this Omer period, which the little children celebrated with such zeal. So in the time of the Midrash, and in every subsequent time that comes from it, may HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through our observance of this mitzvah of counting the Omer, counting time, recognizing it. So Be'ezrat Hashem, and by the way, the fact that the land sanctifies Omer itself, may that help us to bring Yemot HaMashiach, in which, in the very fullest sense, the man and the land and the Mikdash, the place and time, will all be sanctified. So I wish everybody a good Shabbos. Thank you for joining. And Emir Hashem, I hope we'll be able to see each other next week.
Have a good Shabbos. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good Shabbos.
My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.